Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jayesh Kauli, and today I'm going to talk about my journey from individual contributor to become a tech lead. Just FYI, don't let that word iOS mislead you. I'm not here to talk about any iOS stuff. It's more about just soft skills. Before I get started, let me talk a little bit about myself. I currently work at Wayfair as a senior iOS developer and act as a tech lead for checkout team on the Wayfair iOS application. I've been at Wayfair for the last 2.5 years, and it's been quite a great and a wonderful journey so far. For those of you who don't know what Wayfair is an e-commerce company, and we sell furniture and home decor items through online stores. We have headquarters in Boston and other development center in Berlin as well. So what do I do in my free time? I like origamis, although nowadays I don't get much time to make origamis. But like a couple of years ago, I was trying to make an airplane which can go as far as possible. And then I tried to make as many planes as possible so that which is the best and efficient plane. And then I stumbled upon this YouTube channel which taught me like more of these like wonderful shapes. I also like to write blog. My main motivation for writing blog is sharing my information and expertise with other people. Because most of the knowledge I have, I learned that from other people, from their tutorials or video sessions. So that's my main fundamental motives for writing blog. I usually write about iOS, which is my daytime job, the web technology, which I used to do a few years earlier. If I visit any wonderful place around the world, I like to write about that. And I also like to cook food, so sometimes there's some experience in that field as well. All right, so enough about me. Let's get started with this talk. I would like to talk about a little bit about my background when I was an individual contributor and what kind of duties I used to do. As an individual contributor, you're a part of the 2-week sprint. And here you think about working on bugs or feature tickets in the 2-week sprint planning. So not all the work should go in the bugs or feature development, but you can also start thinking about how we can integrate refactoring work as well. Before that, I never had experience leading a team. I was an individual contributor for around 6 years. Although in this time slot, I acted as a mentor multiple times, but I was never a formal tech lead. So a lot of these things were new for me. And then when you're an individual contributor, maybe you sometimes lack a high-level picture. That time, I didn't know how team handled prioritization of tickets and how they measured the efficiency of the sprint. Especially, I knew what are the tickets we are going to work on in the next couple of sprints, but I exactly didn't know what is the roadmap for next 6 months or not. So one day, transition came to me. My manager spoke to me in our one-on-one meetings, and he asked me, "Are you interested in becoming a tech lead for our team?" Our team was expanding, and we were hiring new people. And then he wanted me to become a tech lead for one of those sub-teams. I was kind of scared because I never was a tech lead before, and I thought, how much justice can I give it to the new position? But after some time, I thought, maybe you should be able to learn to accept the things which challenge you the most. And then I said, you know what, challenge accepted. Because I was learning a lot of new things from my manager as well, and there were other tech leads around me. So getting into this new position wasn't exactly so much impossible. It was definitely challenging and difficult, but I was ready for this new journey. Because by becoming a tech lead, I was looking beyond to expand my technical domain and improve my soft skills as well. So when you become a tech lead for the first time, what I learned was that you have to look around and try to get some lessons from the existing people who are tech leads. First thing you have to know is that shifting a mindset. You have to think about how you can make things better as a whole and to have an increased sense of responsibility for as a team. You can also start thinking about how you can support onboarding and mentoring. Onboarding is really good for the new hires on their team. You cannot just hire them and let them ask them to do any random work, but they have to go through the onboarding documentation. And in addition to that, your team, it also helps to have mentorship programs within your teams. The next part is the communication. The communication can come into various formats. But here I'm mainly talking about how the current progress of the ticket is going. Are you blocked on something? Or do you need help from other team members? Because sometimes some team members might finish their tickets early, and they may be available to help you. So not all the tickets need to be, not all the time need to be like spent in blocking, waiting for other blockers. Another thing is that driving direction of the team. As a tech lead, you have to understand how to drive the direction of the team in terms of your productivity, which is number of tickets completed, eliminating blockers, which means even if you face any blocker in the past, it's not exactly bad because you keep learning from that kind of experience. And the future, as you move forward, you can think about how you can avoid that situation again. So as a tech lead, you also have to set up your goals for the current sprint. Because if there are no goals, you don't know how to plan for success. If I say how the goals, I can actually track my progress, whether it's a failure or success. And if I feel like I'm drifting away from my goals, I can make necessary adjustments based on the feedback. Now let's see what are some of the goals we had. When we talk about the sprint planning, we wanted to combine team productivity with the learning. When I talk about you have to finish as many tickets as possible, that's not exactly productive because people can finish the tickets without knowing what's going on or without learning new things. So you want to make sure people are learning, they're going through the mentorship process, and then if you want to finish a ticket or not, that's the secondary part, but at least learning comes first. We also wanted to increase the transparency within teams. And how do you do that? We usually organize demos within our teams where people can actually feature their works to other team members and know what are the other feature works and the refactor works they're working on. And from these demos, they can also get feedback. Like you can ask questions about UX, UI, any code refactor. And the code review is another medium for improving your transparency. We also wanted to make sure we learn from the previous sprints. Look back at the previous sprints and talk about how do you want to make estimation from the future tickets. If you faced any blockers in the previous sprint, start thinking about how you can fix them and avoid those situations leading to the blockers again. When it comes to estimation, it's kind of hard part when you talk about features because I think this feature is going to take 5 days, and I end up taking 10 days for that feature. So if you want to estimate certain ticket, you can look back at the previous feature tickets and try to make the comparison like, oh, this ticket took me 5 days. So based on the features and compatibility and all the work we had to do, maybe this ticket is going to take 7 or 8 days, which comes as close as possible to the actual value. We also wanted to make sure we recognize and motivate people on the team. That means we recognize the people when they go above and beyond their responsibilities and motivate them to take on more challenging work, which means allow them to work on large features, big refactors, and also let them do the critical duties to increase their sense of ownership and responsibility on the team. When it comes to the part of the tech lead, one of the most interesting and challenging part is building a bridge between product managers and technical people. Because our goal is to make this application better, but however, maybe we are talking in different languages. And these are some of the things that we did to make this communication bridge, which can be good for the communication. First part as a tech lead, we wanted to make sure whatever product requirements we get, we can successfully transform or translate that into technical implementation. Because sometimes there is a communication gap, and through this process, we are making sure both the product managers and developers are on the same page. When you get any particular ticket, you should be asking questions such as, what is the impact and severity of this ticket? Is it urgent request? Do we have enough resources to work on that? Because we don't want to make any false promises. In addition to that, developer culture within engineers should feel empowered to directly talk to product managers in case there is an urgent issue or in case your tech lead is on vacation. We also wanted to make sure and push for platform-specific design discrepancies. Especially on mobile applications, sometimes you have to follow different designs for iOS and Android. And sometimes product managers can give you, hey, this is one generic design you have to follow. Don't worry about implications. As a tech lead, you have to push back for those things. I know it is going to take you 2 more weeks to make these designs for iOS or Android specific, but I think this is what we want to do. So you have to stand your stance and making sure things are progressing as expected. We also wanted to make sure there's some interaction between the feature and product revenue. When I publish a new feature or make a bug fix, as a developer or as a tech lead, I need to know how that is impacting customers. If you fix any bug or any crash, you should be able to know how that is affecting customers, if your revenue is increasing or not. So that is one of the things we wanted to focus on as well. In addition to that, we wanted to make sure we're investing enough time for the refactoring. Now, when you talk to product managers, this conversation usually do not go really smooth because we have a bunch of tickets to work on features and bug fixes. And you might get asked, why do we need to do refactor? Is it going to change anything on the front end? No, UI is going to remain same. It just improves efficiency, performance in the back end, or maybe it's a good for feature tickets. Right now we have 10 bugs in our workboard, but if we finish this refactor is going to take care of all of them. But the important factor is that we need to invest some time. That's why we should be thinking about how we can reserve some time for refactoring, and not just for that, but making the better architectures. And if you don't have any unit tests in your application, you might also want to devote some time for that work. So now let me talk a little bit about team. As a team, we want to make sure we are in this together. If something goes wrong, we want to come together as a team and work towards finding a solution. And if something is good or successful, we should be celebrating that success together. Our goal was to work together to improve the productivity as a whole. That's why we had effective onboarding for the new team members, making sure there is an onboarding work group, and we are working together to maintain it. If there are any discrepancies, if the documentation is lacking with up-to-date information, we should be making up-to-date the latest information in that documentation. In addition to that, we wanted to have mentorship programs on the team. When a new person comes on the team, they have a lot to learn, not just about technical aspect, but also there's some specific team-specific documentation as well. So if you don't have mentorship programs, person might not feel confident enough, or especially when they work on the feature tickets. That's why maybe we usually spend like first month during the mentorship programs, and new hires can ask any questions they have about the teams or general aspects of the domain knowledge. We also wanted to make sure we're helping each other and learning together in this process. If they have any technical questions or they want to do any code reviews, that can also be done efficiently. Especially code reviews are the best medium to do that, because if I ask somebody to write a feature, and I'm going to review their code, and if there are any bigger mistakes or there's some scope for the improvements, the iterative code reviews can actually help them a lot to learn rather than just a documentation, which is the theoretical part. When it comes to helping each other and learning together, output multiplier principle is my favorite part. It says that if you could just increase the productivity of individual team member by 10%, it significantly improves the overall output as a team. It's especially true because our team size is growing. And if we remember this principle and keep applying to the individual team members, that is going to benefit us a lot in the long term. We also encourage people for the new ideas. We strive to make project better. So as a tech lead, I might have some blind spots. I might say, this is good, or this cannot be improved. But some other team members might have better ideas about how to improve that. So we always motivate and encourage people to provide those ideas as well. So now I want to talk about like fun and kind of challenging part of sprint planning. What are some of the duties that tech lead has to take on, and how they can work, how they can make the sprint better. When it comes to sprint planning, you have to ask questions to clarify requirements and goals. When you get a new ticket, you cannot just blindly accept that. As a tech lead, you can ask questions such as, what are certain edge cases you want us to test for the manual testers as well, or for the developers? You also need to get information on the specifications, list of stakeholders, acceptance criteria. And when you get a ticket, you might just want to categorize whether it's a bug fix, feature, or the refactor. By the time when you finish the sprint, you can actually see the overview of the tickets and the types that you finished. You might also want to include all the stakeholders from other teams, which including but not limited to design and UX, QA and manual testing, analytics, and other product managers as well, in order to make sure all the work you're doing is not going to affect your team. Especially if I'm working on a new feature, then analytics can tell me, this feature is fine, but you might also need to add this tracking. If I have any questions about designs, or they do not actually pertain to iOS designs, I can also get to ask those questions to the UX and designers. When you make the sprint planning, one thing you have to do is that make an estimation. Estimations are hard, and I'm going to talk about this in subsequent slides. But most of the estimates we make that are not exactly close to the actual value. So we had a plan. When you have a feature ticket, try to compare that feature with the previous ticket, and try to gauge how much time are you going to take to finish it. Now, your estimation are not going to be as exact as possible as with the reality value, because there could be other hurdles. You might be working on critical tasks. There might be some blockers. However, those estimations you make based on the previous values are going to be as close as possible to the actual value. When you make the sprint planning, you also want to be conservative and practical. Think proactively about this approach, like consider availability of the people, are they going on vacation, and are you making any necessary adjustments in the sprint planning or not? And based on that, you can actually avoid any surprises. Especially when you're working on a feature as a developer, and you say, I'm going to finish that in 2 days. But that's not exactly correct. maybe you can write feature in 2 days, but the code still has to, you still have to write unit test. Code has to go through the code review, and you also need to get all the sign-offs from stakeholders, like QA people, designers. That might take some more time. And if the manual QA finds any fault, that task is going to come back to you. So you have to consider all these factors when you want to make better and efficient estimation. Now let me talk a little bit about communication. This is more like your team communication and how you can maintain it consistent and efficient. When it comes to communication, you want to give emphasis on the consistent communication, which means if you have a question, you should not be getting two different answers from different sources. That way it can cause confusion and chaos. And by the time you finish that ticket, maybe that is not what it was expected originally. So you have to make sure the communication is consistent, and better you can start making documentation and any wiki articles on that. When you start working on the tickets, everybody likes good news. But unfortunately, there are not going to be good news all the time. You might also get some bad news. But one thing I learned from my experience is that if you think something is bad or something is going to get blocked, you should give that bad news to your tech lead or the product managers as soon as possible, even though that may make them feel unhappy or uncomfortable. That way they can, if they want to allocate any extra resources or they want to allocate extra time for that feature, they can do that. But if you wait until the end of the sprint to give that bad news, everybody is going to be unhappy because that time they won't have enough time to pivot around that work. When you work on the tickets, you might also want to ask clarification and alternative approaches. And this is something you can discuss with your senior engineers or your tech leads. You can ask questions about, hey, I have like these ideas for this refactor. Which idea do you think is the best, or how should I do that? So brainstorm those ideas. Do not always go with easy and inefficient ones. And the same thing goes with your product managers. If you're working on a feature, and if you feel like that is going to take like longer time, you can let them know as soon as possible and ask them like, hey, I think I might be able to finish this ticket in like this sprint, but it won't be full. So what is your opinion? Do we release the half feature, or do we want to like wait for one more sprint, or do you want to assign 2 more developers to work on this feature? So there are different criteria and options. I'm not saying which one is the best one. That depends on your current situation and requirements. In addition to that, if you are going to release a risky feature or the new refactor, you might also want to put that behind the feature toggle to avoid any unnecessary complexities in the production. In the next slide, let's talk about the code reviews. It is a culture to establish a quality within your teams. Now, in my own experience, when I started the code reviews, it wasn't exactly my favorite part. But as you go along, you want to understand like how that can affect your quality in the long term and how you can start making this code better. It's also good for transparency because if you have say 7 or 8 team members, you don't exactly know what are the tickets they're working on. But if you start reviewing their code, you know what are the features they're working on, you can give some comments, and that's a great way to increase the team communication and transparency. Let's see what are some of the things that we want to achieve by doing code reviews. Code review is a great tool for learning and teaching. By doing code reviews, we work towards becoming a better developer, and it's a medium to let others know how they can bring improvements to the whole code base. Even if you think you're a perfect developer, there are no mistakes in your code, maybe other people can learn from your code as well. So it's nothing bad to put your code for the review, whether it's good or bad. On our team, we also encourage people to do the frequent code reviews. Especially when you're new to the team, you feel kind of scared. What happens if I just make a comment on this person who is like 5 years senior to me? It's perfectly okay to ask questions. If you have any doubts about the code, or if there are any missing comments, you can also like explain those things in the code review process. Because it's good for your career progress, transparency, and communicating your ideas to other team members. One of our goals on the team was bring everyone on board with the code review culture. Code review should not just be associated with the technical people, but we also have to like let product managers know how important they are in addition to unit tests. It is so important to our culture is that as a developer, when I try to release a new feature or make a bug fix, my product manager actually asks me, like, did you write unit tests for that so that if somebody breaks that in the future, are we going to catch that? They also ask questions such as, are we doing code review on this thing or not? So these are really good metrics to improve your code. So once sprint is done, not everything is finished. You still have to look back and see what are the things you did right and what are things you could have improved upon. So in this slide, I'm going to discuss some of the things that we try to achieve by looking back at the previous sprint and try to see like how we did. So in the retro sessions, we have 3 columns. The first 2 columns are trying to understand what are the things that went wrong and what are things that went well. That way we can start thinking about what was the reason behind the things that went wrong. We also wanted to investigate and analyze blockers. If you run into any situation that is going to take you extra time to finish the work, you might also want to think about like make a ticket, try to communicate with relevant teams, and try to think about how you can start fixing those things. We also start thinking about starting a new things, because not all the things go into explaining the things that went wrong and well. But we want to know what are the things that we should start doing on the team. So we can think about the things to improve the team productivity, such as cleaning the code base, creating a documentation, active review time, and if there is a relatively new team member on the team, you can also start doing pair programming with them, so that you can let them know your feedback as soon as they are writing the code, instead of going through the bunch of comments to code review. When the retro sessions are done, we also want to prioritize action items and follow up on them. Just creating action items is not enough. You might also want to follow up on them and check whether you are actually going to get resolved or not. So what we can do is that we usually make 3 columns, things that went well, things that did not go well, and the other is that things we should start doing. And each member of the team gets 2 votes per each column, and they actually start voting those things. And we make a list of all the tickets that we want to follow up, and then we in the next retro session, we try to see whether we're actually following up or not. Now let's see one example of one of the retro sessions we had in the previous month. So this is a list of all the things that went well. We had a very little carryover from the previous sprint, which is good, which means we can take more and more tickets in the sprint to work on. We also had the new mid-sprint meeting, which was useful. The way this mid-sprint planning meeting worked was that we had a bunch of developers gathering in the middle of the sprint, and we would ask them, are you facing any blockers? Do you have any questions? Or is there something you want from the team or from the product managers? And if any developers has already finished their tickets, they can also help other developers to finish their tickets as well. In addition to that, we had the code review done faster than usual as well. Sometimes it happens that you don't have enough code approver on your team. That's why even if you have finished the feature, you got all the sign-offs, some tickets might get blocked in the code review pipeline. So that obviously blocks our work, even though we are ready to work on the next tickets or not. In this case, the code review was done faster than usual, which let us work on additional tickets. In addition to that, we had 3 team demos, which means if I worked on the feature, I also got opportunity to demonstrate that work to other developers, which is good for transparency and getting feedback from them as well. Now comes to kind of unhappy part, things that did not go well. For some tickets, we had some ambiguity about deadlines, so we didn't know like when exactly we are supposed to release this feature. That caused a delay, and things did not actually go well. We had a lot of tickets that were not fully fleshed out. As I mentioned earlier, as a tech lead, you have to understand what are the requirements and make sure all the stakeholders are on the same page as long as the ticket is concerned. So when you take any ticket into sprint, which is not completely fleshed out, you have a lot of questions, and those questions can eventually act as a blocker. So you want to make sure those things are more clear so that you won't get blocked in the middle of the sprint. There was also some confusion about the QA process. As an iOS developer, when we send those builds to the QA people, we didn't know like whether we are supposed to install that build manually on their devices or we are supposed to use the build system. So that was like kind of one source of confusion. In addition to that, not all the times you have to work on sprint tickets. If something goes wrong in the production code or if there is a serious crash, you have to leave everything and start working on those critical tickets. That way, you don't get enough time to work on those tickets. And that sprint, we had a couple of tickets which took 2 or 3 days of our time. Then we also want to talk about the things that we should start doing in the subsequent sprints. When our sprint planning happens, we want to make sure we run the backend team through the mobile apps release document. Because if you're on a new endpoint or the new feature, then you have the specific guideline or the specific deadline to release that feature. If not everybody is on the same page, then it is going to happen is that your iOS application is OK, but maybe your backend is not ready by that time. So you want to make sure everybody is on the same page as long as deadline and requirements are concerned. We also wanted to make sure the tickets are ready to work on with all the requirements, and this is in sync with the previous point that I mentioned. Like some of the tickets were not fully fleshed out, so you have to make sure all the requirements are clear, and you have to push back if something is not ready to be worked on yet. In addition to that, when we make tickets for the bugs, features, or the refactor, we should start using the templates, and that was kind of a relatively new thing for us that time. So that saves a lot of time, especially the feature template actually follows the same pattern. So instead of inputting all the information and making that inconsistent, you can start following the same template. That saves you a lot of time, and then everybody can understand what's going on. The documenting through the code comments, that is something we wanted to do as well. When you're working on a new feature or write a new class or new method, maybe it's obvious to you. However, that may not be obvious to the developer. So when the code goes through the code review process, you have to make sure all the code is documented, there is enough information on that, so you have to push back on that requirements when the code review happens as well. In addition to that, when you start using a new tool or the new feature, you can also start making documentation on that, how that should go through. So this was all about theory, which is like a little bit boring part. But let's take a look at some of the metrics and numbers we got by the end of the sprint planning. So it contains some of the numbers, statistics, data, and much more. Before I begin talking about this, some of the metrics, I want to talk a little bit about our ticket structure. So every ticket gets like few attributes, and here I'm going to list some of the most significant attributes in the experience. So for the tickets, we have the status, which means whether it's in progress, it's completed, or in QA. We also have the ticket number, the title, name of the person to whom that ticket has been assigned to originally. We also have the estimation, that is the original estimation. As a developer, you think how long it is going to take you to finish that feature. And it also contains another attribute which says the number of days logged on the ticket, which means actual time that it took to finish that ticket. So based on this attribute, we started creating certain metrics, which helped us to identify certain blockers and how the sprint is progressing when you try to compare those metrics from current to the next sprint. So first metric is accuracy, which says how well we are estimating. It is calculated by dividing estimated points done by consumed points done, which means if I say I'm going to finish this feature, say like 5 days, but if I finish that feature in just 3 days, that's not enough because I was still off on accuracy. And that goes, the same logic applies if I finish that ticket like in 7 days. So by introducing this metric, we wanted to make sure we estimate tickets as accurate as possible. Another thing was consistency. It says how well we are keeping our promises. It is calculated by dividing estimated points done by estimated points accepted. It says that if I say we are going to take on 10 points in the sprint, but if I'm able to deliver just 5 points, then my consistency suffers. So it says that how widely you are able to like keep your promises in terms of number of tickets finished. We also have other bottlenecks which corresponds to like specific pipelines. So we have the QA bottleneck, which calculates number of tickets waiting in the QA pipeline. We have the code review bottleneck and the in-progress bottleneck. So with these metrics, we get to know some idea of the tickets which are like waiting in the specific pipeline and why did that exactly happen. For example, if you want to talk about the QA bottleneck, you can calculate that value by dividing estimated points in QA by dividing estimated points accepted as in the whole sprint. Here are some of the results that we got back from calculating these metrics for successive sprints. So here we have the five attributes: the accuracy, consistency, QA bottleneck, code review bottleneck, and in-progress bottleneck. So in the sprint one, our accuracy was kind of close to 100%. The consistency was less than 50%. And then we had like a bunch of tickets in QA and code review bottleneck as well. In the sprint two, the accuracy is 200%, which is not exactly the best. The consistency was still closer to the previous sprint. And then we had like several tickets in the QA, code review, and in-progress bottleneck. However, things actually improved a lot in the sprint 3, which says that accuracy is like 150%. We were able to finish 87% of the tickets. And virtually there were no tickets in the QA and code review bottleneck and very few tickets in the in-progress. However, as it's clear from this slide, something went wrong in the sprint 4, where we had some accuracy of around 140%, the consistency of below 50%, and then we had some tickets in each bottleneck. So we were also surprised, why did that happen? So we went back, did some analysis, and tried to like find out some of the things that might have went wrong. We had laser efficiency in the last sprint because some of the tracking and design specifications were not clear, which led to the missing sign-offs. That was a good lesson that we learned. We also had to work on some of the ad hoc issue related to broken authentication. Like for some reason, authentication was not working, and that blocked us from working on some of the features that were required to go through the authentication and login flow. We also had some issue with the Xcode IDE. We use Xcode to write application on the iOS platform. And at that point, because of the release of the new Xcode version, it broke our build locally as well as on our build machines. So that kind of introduced another blocker for our process as well. So these are some of the things that we learned when we get like bad performance in specific sprint. So what did we learn from the sprint matrix? This is the statistics to measure the progress and blockers. You don't always have to calculate your efficiency in terms of number of tickets completed, but you can also look back and see what were sources of most efficiency and what were the sources for the blockers. We also wanted to utilize some of the numbers from the past sprints, especially when it comes to like making the estimation. Maybe making estimation for the bugs is more straightforward because you can see this is a bug fix, so maybe it can take me like 1 or 2 days. But when it comes to feature, which has like so many moving parts, a lot of stakeholders, maybe you have to deal with endpoints and other design-related work as well. And that way, the feature work might take longer than expected, especially if you have the big merge request. The code review can take longer than usual, and maybe there are more than just one person looking at your code. We also utilize mid-sprint review meetings to avoid surprises. In this review meeting, we got to know where team stands in terms of the progress and current ticket blockers. We got to know where the team stands in terms of current progress and expected goals. Here we expect people to ask questions if they're facing any blockers or if they need something from me or from the product managers. Briefly ask which part they're working on, do they need any help or are there any blockers? And if any critical tickets come in, do they need any help on that? And if you have like too many critical tickets to work on the sprint, you might also want to adjust your current sprint to maintain that pace throughout your work. So now we are in the final part of the presentation, and I would like to express some of my final thoughts on the whole experience and the work leading to from individual contributor and to become a tech lead. In the summary, what I learned was that being a tech lead is not just about the technical skills. You also have to develop your soft skills, and communication matters a lot. You have to keep everybody on the same page, and maybe over-communication is better than under-communication in this case. So you want to learn how to share feedback with your peers, with your managers, your direct reports. Email communication might be better, but you might also want to start thinking about how you can schedule weekly one-on-one meetings to get some extra feedback as well. We also organize some of the sessions to brainstorm some of the ideas, like what is the feature you think is the most friction for the customers, and what are some of the things that we should start doing to remove some of the blockers in the process. In that way, we want to improve the team productivity in collaboration with learning opportunity. People can also propose certain ideas for improving efficiencies through the mid-sprint reviews, regular code reviews, mentorship programs, and weekly retro sessions after a sprint is done. We also ask people for the feedback, iterate on that feedback, and refine. As I mentioned earlier, when I became a tech lead for the first time, there were a lot of things I didn't know, and in some cases, I didn't even know whether I'm doing the right thing or not. So what you can do is that you can organize like one-on-one meeting with your teammates, your direct reports, and get feedback from them. And to my manager, who was a tech lead for a long time, I would ask, do you think like, am I doing right things, or there are certain things you think I should start doing? So getting this feedback is really important. Never take it personally, just concentrate on your performance. But also ask questions such as, what are the things I can start doing to improve my performance for as a team, and iterate and refine on them. The next thing is you also want to learn how to motivate and delegate your team members. Sometimes you can give them challenging tasks to work on, which can give them sense of accountability as a team members. You can also start recognizing their work and highlight their successes with rest of the teams. So now if you just give like certain tickets, like change colors or change fonts, maybe it's really easy for them, but that's not going to like give them opportunity to learn, and they might feel demotivated to work on teams. That's why you have to like balance tickets, like, oh, this ticket can act as easy for them. This ticket can fit their current techniques and a skill set. And these specific tickets can act as a good challenge for them, and they can actually learn some new things. So when a new ticket comes in the sprint, you don't always have to like think about like finishing that by yourself or as a senior developer. You can always say, you know what, this is like more challenging ticket. So I'm going to give it to this person for whom it can act as a challenge for some time, but eventually it is going to be like much more exciting for them and they can start doing that thing. In my experience, when I was working, just starting my software developer career, I would take on a lot of bugs because I thought like working on feature is not really my cup of tea. But however, over the years, I understood that you have to take on features. Even though you're blocked on something, you're not all by yourself. There are always other team members who can help you. You can ask questions. And by the time you're done with that big feature or the big refactor, you get the confidence and you get that sense of accomplishments by the end of that time. And that is all I have to share in this talk. Thank you so much for listening. This is some of my social networking information if you want to connect to me over my blog or through Twitter. And there is also another link to share the feedback to the join in. One last exciting piece of news. There's a break after this talk, and there is going to be Italian ice cream. So feel free to grab and enjoy it. And I think that's all. Thank you so much.